Speaker Ryan said that he disagreed with Trump on the Ku Klux Klan, but immediately thereafter said that he would support him for president. Republicans are saying they'll support a man who refuses to denounce the Ku Klux Klan. So until they withdraw their support, talk is really cheap. As most of you know, I went to the White House this morning with Senator Leahy, met with Grassley and McConnell, and we were in with the president for about 40 minutes, and it was a very short meeting. They're adamant, even though it's never happened in the history of the country, they're going to do nothing. This is pretty stunning. If they can meet with the president, shouldn't they at least sit down and talk to the nominee, which the president said would be coming shortly? They have a constitutional duty to consider the president's nominations for the Supreme Court. They took an oath, swearing they would uphold the Constitution. They raised their hands, swore to God that they would do that. No meeting, no hearing, no vote. Pretty stunning. So maybe they're going to wait and see what President Trump's going to do, who he wants to nominate. Maybe that's their wish. Senator Durbin.
My staff took a look at the Senate Judiciary Committee website. I recommend that you go to it. I want to read to you a section that is posted on the website of Senator Grassley's Senate Judiciary Committee. When a vacancy occurs on the Supreme Court, the President of the United States is given the authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to nominate the person to fill the vacancy. The nomination is referred to the United States Senate, where the Senate Judiciary Committee holds a hearing where the nominee provides testimony in response to questions from members of the panel. Traditionally, the committee refers the nomination to the U.S. Senate for full consideration. I didn't see the words in there except in election years. But that's what we're hearing now. And you have to ask yourself, why are the Republicans going to these lengths to ignore the clear wording of the Constitution and to ignore what they're printing themselves as the standard procedure of the Senate Judiciary Committee? And the answer is pretty obvious. They're waiting in vain hope for President Trump. They believe that when President Trump fills this vacancy, he'll put someone in of their liking, someone who agrees with them on a philosophical basis. That isn't fair to America. They should do their job, and their job means taking the nominee sent by the President, holding a hearing and a vote. That is the tradition of the United States Senate, and it's the clear mandate of the Constitution.
Well, today on Super Tuesday, the Republican Party is in the throes of a full-fledged governing crisis. They seem to be spinning out of control, moving in so many different directions. On Capitol Hill, the Republicans are fighting amongst themselves on whether to back a bipartisan budget deal that their leaders struck last year, and they claimed would take dysfunction and governing by crisis off the table. They can't even keep that promise. On the campaign trail, the Republican frontrunner seems poised to strengthen his grip on the nomination, forcing congressional Republicans to decide between hanging on to him for dear life or running for the hills. And here in the Senate, Republicans are continuing to abdicate their constitutional duty and refuse to do the job they were elected to do. Senators raised their right hand, swore an oath to the Constitution that says they should advise and consent on Supreme Court nominees. Now they won't even lift a finger to honor that oath. And why? Are Republican senators refusing to do their job so that Donald Trump gets to pick the next Supreme Court justice? There's a vacancy right now. We have a president right now. He's going to put forward a nominee shortly. The time to do our job is right now. Senators have a job to do no matter who is in the White House. Senate Democrats understood that and confirmed Senator Kennedy in 1988, the last year of President Reagan's term. Senators throughout the centuries have understood it and approved 17 previous court justices in the final year of a presidential term. So the bottom line is the Republican Party is in disarray, as it hasn't been in decades. Each day, Republicans do more to undermine their argument that they can be trusted to govern this country. Forget asking if they can get along with Republicans. The American people have to ask if Republicans can get along with themselves. While this struggle for the soul of the Republican Party plays out in the House, in the Senate, in the presidential campaign, the American people get caught in the crossfire. Republican leaders here in the Senate need to reject the extreme voices of their party and listen to the American people. It's time for the Republicans to do your job.
Senator Murray?
Well, our message to Republican leaders couldn't be simpler. Do your jobs and let us do ours. The Constitution lays out the responsibilities very clearly, and it is not vague. Article 2, Section 2, as Senator Durbin read, when there is a vacancy in the Supreme Court, the President, quote, shall nominate someone to fill it. That's the President's responsibility for his full 4-year term. And it's our responsibility in the Senate to advise the President, consider a nominee, and make sure that vacancy is filled with a qualified person. That is one of our most important jobs here. And it's not a job Republican leaders should simply refuse to do because the Tea Party doesn't like it. Let's be clear here. What Republican leaders are doing right now is extreme and unprecedented. They are not objecting to a person. They are objecting to the very idea of this president, President Obama, being allowed to do his job. They are saying they won't even meet with the nominee, no matter how qualified he or she is. And instead of doing their jobs, Republican leaders would rather politicize this process and keep the court dysfunctional for another year, in the hopes that a Republican leader like Donald Trump wins the presidency and chooses someone that they might like better. That's shameful, and for families across our country, they're not going to stand for it. Republican leaders may say they don't care what their constituents think about this, but we'll see how long they can ignore the families back home who expect them to do the job.
Questions?
Senator Reid, could you talk about whether or not vulnerable Senate Republicans, ones that you hope to defeat in blue states, whether they will be able to distance themselves from a nominee Trump, the way Republicans seem to be discussing privately, that they can distance themselves. They can say that,
But you know,
like a hot rock or whatever.
my answer to that is they're doing it all privately. Let them say something publicly. They're very, very, very few of them willing to do that because they're afraid. They're afraid that the Trump millions will stand up against the people who are whispering in the offices and afraid to say anything public. That's one of the reasons that Trump is marching forward on Super Tuesday.
Senator,
Yeah.
Leader McConnell told us he reiterated his position to the president in the meeting today. Sitting there in the White House, did you see anything in his body language that suggested he's uncomfortable at all with where he's at?
No, I think Senator McConnell's pleased with where he is. I think he feels comfortable with doing something that's never been done before, never in the history of the country.
What about Senator Grassley?
Well, I've told you how I feel about Grassley on the floor, so I think it's really, really too bad that this powerful Judiciary Committee, which has such a stunning record, I haven't always agreed with what the chairs of the Judiciary Committee has done in the past, but one thing they haven't done is capitulate to presidents, their party leaders. They've been strong. For example, in the throes of Roosevelt's popularity, a Democratic senator, a member of Roosevelt's own party, told President Roosevelt, you're wrong trying to pack the court, Alban Barkley, majority leader, came to him and said, you got to help the president. He said, no thanks. So I think it's really pathetic that we have a chairman of this powerful committee that is wilted.
Senator, earlier today, House Republicans said that Senator McConnell gave them the impression that Democrats in the Senate would be open to going through each one of the appropriations bills. He gave them, he said that this was something that you guys were in support of. Is that correct?
Well, I think that the press accounts I read, Senator McConnell said that he wanted to stick with the numbers we did last year. But he was told by many Republican House members that they wouldn't agree to that. So if they're going to try to make defense not on par with the middle class, they're going to try to put a lot of these riders that we know are trouble, then they better be very careful what they bring to us, because we proved last year what we can do, and we can do it again.
But assuming they do stick to the deal, would you support doing?
Oh, sure. If they stick with the deal, we'll be happy to do it. But they have to stick with the deal. One more question?
So you're saying if they stick to that top line number that you agreed upon, you'll go along with it, but if they add riders, then you will not go along?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, riders that the president and we don't agree with. We can call them poison pill riders. We can call them non-germane riders. Call them whatever you want. But we want to have a good process like we always used to have. But now this new Republican Party, they want to do everything different. And one of the things they're doing is they're doing everything they can to diminish the power of the chairs of the very powerful chairs that we've had for. The Judiciary Committee has been in existence for 200 years. And they also want to damage what the Senate is created by the Founding Fathers to do. They're changing everything, and not for the better. Yeah, it was mentioned very briefly. It was.
Any progress there on that, from your perspective?
No, which is really too bad. The people of Puerto Rico are near desperation, and to have all these conversations, we're working on it. We want to make sure there's adequate controls and all that stuff. It's really too bad. Puerto Ricans are American citizens, and they haven't been treated fairly.